Welcome to fulfilling this belly sting. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Look at that.
Good morning and happy Thursday to you. Today we're talking about the Norse god Thor and how he influences our lives every day. Before we get started today, I want to say thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed on one of the many different platforms at which we broadcast. I am so honored that you would join us each and every day, and I am very thankful that hopefully we've provided some level of intellect that you can take away that helps you obtain or maintain a better mental space. If you haven't had the opportunity yet to subscribe, please do so. I want to call out all of the platforms that support us. Most importantly, New Reality TV. newrealitytv.com is a streaming channel dedicated to perspectives, a multitude of spiritual perspectives that can help us along our journey of obtaining and maintaining our mental space, as well as discovering our spiritual destiny. For you who may find that you have a couple of coins jingling around in the pocket and want to put them to good use, by all means, please check out our donation pages. Those can be found at either pay.akoutlaw.com or akoutlaw.live. You can find both of those links. More about me, more about my book, more about my television shows, more about my teachings, and also identify maybe a service that I provide that we can open a dialogue and we can communicate and hopefully help you to obtain that mental space, that better mental space, that better successful mental space. You can find all of that at norsewhispers.com. Today we're talking about the power of Thor. Now, Thor was known quite far and wide for his physical strength. He was a very powerful god, particularly when wielding his hammer, Mjolnir, in the defense or the establishment of order throughout the realms, as he carried out his father's, or the kind of ambition of organizing and providing order to the realm. But one of the things that Thor was most known for was his physical strength. There's a story in the legends that I was told of Thor where the only entity at which Thor could not probably overcome was an old woman named Time. And she was capable of putting even the mighty Thor into a different position. Now, Thor represents physical strength, a power, a brutality. But remember, we really don't reach a pinnacle of our physical strength, of our physical power, until we apply a little bit of discipline. We're going to exercise, right? We're going to get to the gym, we're going to work out, we're going to build that physical muscles in much the same way that elite athletes would focus themselves towards obtaining this peak performance, whether it was strength, whether it was endurance, whatever it was. They apply a focus to their concentration, which allows them to then build this physical form. In much the same way we do with our minds. We can create tricks and tips. And today I want to kind of talk about those tricks that we can use to help us to establish the decision-making process and to stick to those. Remember, as we make our decisions, as we focus our thought process on making decisions, we're going to have these influential energies coming in from all around us. And these influential energies are going to try to sway us from that objective, right? So, in much the same way as if we were to go to our families and say, I'd like to take up tightrope walking. That sounds pretty exciting. So I want to try doing tightrope. Our family's probably going to spend a little bit of time with passing along their influential energy to change our mind. Have you thought of something else? Could you be a trapeze artist? Could you be anything else? They're going to try to convince us to pick another career choice. Okay. Understand what that means, what that is. Now, there is the option that they could physically constrain us, tie us to a cinder block, and physically restrain us from accomplishing our objective. But more often than likely, what they're going to do is they're going to try to convince us. And when we're trying to convince someone of something, we're simply passing influential energies to them. So influential energies come in a multitude of flavors. They're going to come in optically. We're going to see things. We're going to hear things. We may smell or taste or even touch things that are going to try to convince us to change, to alter, or to remain along a path that we've chosen. So this influential energy, some we may recognize. If we're engaged in some kind of media, whether it be the radio or the TV or the internet or gathering with friends, these influential energies are going to be obvious, right? If we decide that we happen to have emotional feelings towards a particular individual, people in our social group may go, no, maybe not. And they'll try to convince us otherwise. So they're going to send this energy across to us that says, derail, right? These energies are transmitted to our brain through our sensory input. They're obvious, and we can then manage them accordingly. What happens when we think about energies like this, we have to recall the level of authority that we have given this other individual. Many times when I speak about the well of the self, I always speak about people in our lives giving us their values based on, whatever their motives are, whether it's for our own good or not. These people are issued some level of authority. So authority figures early in our lives, obviously parents, potentially older uncles, older aunts, grandparents, certainly the elders. There's a plethora of people with whom we will issue some level of authority to collect their values. So we find that as we're speaking with grandmother, and grandmother is telling us about a particular subject at which she's knowledgeable, this information provides some level of authority versus if our friend were to say the same thing, right? It depends on who we value more, right? So who we've given more authority within our minds. Okay? And so this idea of these levels of authority that we're given freely, we give them out all day long to everyone around us, whether it be the stranger on the street who seems to maybe know about a particular subject, or whether it be a friend of ours whom we know we've studied with. Matters not, right? The brain doesn't recognize the difference. It sees this influential energy coming in from either a sensory input or from our spiritual brain. Remember, when I've defined your brain in the past, I've said that there are three parts. There's the forward part, which is our physical sensory interpretation. There's the memory, the middle part, all of our memories. And then there's our spiritual self. Spiritual self connected to both us physically and the spiritual realm at the same time, right? And so all of these brains work in conjunction with each other to accept input. So your spiritual brain is accepting input, your physical brain is accepting input. There's manipulations based on, again, a level of authority that feeds into our memories, right? So many times our spiritual mind, as it brings in its energy into our memories, will more than likely be recognized by our physical brain as feelings, as this gut, as this, now I know which way I should go. I know what my destiny is, whatever, okay? So that's how the physical brain interprets spiritual input. All of it comes through this place called memories. Memories is simply that. It's just a simple black box. It has it has really no function without input from these other two sources. Now, to say that a blind person would have no physical sensory input, therefore they have no imagery within their memories, is a false understanding of what the memories are. The memories are a space between the physical brain and the spiritual brain, both of which are feeding into this thing called memories. Our spiritual brain filters and does a very similar process to our physical thought process, our physical sensory input, very much the same way to get these energies from extrinsic to intrinsic, and then relies on them to come up with stuff. In other words, once we've built our memories are then kind of recycled. So if we build a memory, our next experience, we're going to have a minute fraction of our previous experience. We call this imagination. In the physical brain, we call this imagination. In the spiritual brain, we call this just reconnecting, reassociation. So we're creating imagery within our mind, usually for like those who are maybe visually impaired, their sensory input is limited from the physical side, but our spiritual side still brings in visual imagery that our brain uses then to kind of imagine what things would look like. As an example, if you were in a dark room, if you were in a very dark room, you couldn't see, right? So you cover your eyes, and someone made a sound. Now, our imagination then kicks in. We then imagine what this item that made this sound looks like. So if in our visual prevented state, we hear a growl, it's a really dark, deep growl. What do we assume? Immediately, our brain is flooded with imagery. This could be a tiger or a lion or a bear or a big dog or so, right? So we're starting to put imagery to the sound. This is imagination. We're using imagery to then help our brain recognize, quantify, and catalog this input. All right? So that's really the cyclic effect. So when we talk about influences that sway us one way or another, it can be an extrinsic influence or it can be an intrinsic influence, i.e., our imagination. Our imagination can be caused by either A, physical sensory input memories, or spiritual input memories. Both of these feed into this thing called memories, which then creates the cyclic effect, which then takes imagery and applies it to any sensory input that doesn't provide a visual. So as the example I used, we heard something in a very dark room. We're providing the imagery for that, right? Sometimes this imagery trumps what is actually coming in through our physical sensory input of vision. For those of us who do have vision and we see something, we hear it differently, right? Or we understand it differently. Our imagination may come into play. For an example, if we are walking down a street, dark night, but it's lit, we can still see, and we're walking comfortably by ourselves in what is referred to as a seedier part of town, right? So safety and security may start to come in question. But then we see a large figure moving along the street on the other side of the street, right? We have a level of apprehension. This level of apprehension is caused by our imagination superimposing itself now on our visual input. We see the man, he's walking, yet we have a level of apprehension. This level is caused by us imagining him doing something that we're not desirous of. That's imagination superimposing itself on our visual or our sensory input in this case. All right, I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about steps, actual physical steps you can use to help yourself maintain control and apply mental strength to deny the influential energies all around us. All right? So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about steps that we can use every day in the modern day.
In the air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me.
It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for taking that quick break. I also want to give a huge shout out in addition to my friends and my family at New Reality TV. Please check them out. You will not be disappointed. There is a perspective offered there for every possible way of looking at our lives. So check them out, newrealitytv.com. All right, we've spoken about the strength of mind. We've talked about all the influences, or a lot of the influences, and we've talked about how generally we think. So now let's talk about some physical steps that we can use today. Today, starting as soon as this video is over, you can use in your everyday life to maintain a decision or a mental state that you want to keep, right? So, firstly, we recognize that there are influences that are going to affect our lives. These influences are not only extrinsic, but also intrinsic. Our own imagination may work against us. So we got to kind of get that in check. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is the use of affirmations. Now, affirmations are a great way at which to identify, remind the brain of a path that we want to be on. All right, so they can be very simple. I have, a little stack of cards here for my affirmations each and every day of finding joy, of finding happiness, finding beauty, right? And I constantly remind myself, hey, in this picture that may look grim, may look dirty, may look dingy, what are the beautiful aspects of that? If I forget, if I start falling victim to the negative and the maybe the dirty and just unwanted, I can look at this affirmation and remind myself. Now, some other affirmations, other ways to affirm our mental strength is, of course, through jewelry. This is one of the key ways that I use every day to remind me. Now, I wear a Mjolnir here on my neck. Mjolnir reminds me of my mental strength. When I think of Mjolnir, I immediately think of Thor and his physical strength. But not only did Thor have physical strength, he had mental strength too. Remember, you're not just gifted with this physical strength. You had to exercise. You had to build those physical muscles to a point of strength. And so you wound up having to focus our energies at bringing this to fruition. So it takes a mental discipline of sort. Now, one of the other ways that we're going to think about managing those influences is understanding how those influences are going to affect us. How do we do that? Well, first we got to figure out who we are. We got to draw that baseline in the sand and say, all right, if I am reminded of hate and division and segregation, what is my stand on that? Do I vehemently deny and fight against it? Or do I say, that's one perspective, but have you considered this other perspective? Do I make it intellectual? Can I convert this process, convert this energy into saying, okay, I recognize your position, but I also see that this position would typically be indicative that, well, you've got some negativity brewing inside you. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about those negatives, right? Kind of change that conversation. How do we do that? Again, we have to recognize who we are, what we want. Joy, love, harmony, peace, contentment, comfort, all of these things we want in our lives. Is that what makes us truly happy? I'm always reminded of people whom have obtained billions of dollars, and they say, oh, I want to be rich, I want to be wealthy beyond imagination. They achieve $1 billion, yet they still find that they're not happy. Yeah, they can pacify themselves with things to keep them busy, things to do, right? But they're not truly happy. Why? Well, because they didn't look far enough deep down and say, what I really, really want, what I really would love is to spend good quality time with a significant other, or my children, or my grandchildren, or whatever, right? All of a sudden, it doesn't matter the cost. I love spending time with my grandchildren, and we go out in the backyard and we find bugs and leaves and cool stuff. We play with my familiar who loves being with people and loves being loved on. So there's no cost in that. So again, finding out where we are. Now, I always recommend, when discovering who you are and what you're about, is to think about journaling, writing down stuff, taking moments throughout our day or whenever to intrinsically reflect on who we are. We ask ourselves questions, hard questions like, why do we believe in this? Or what do we believe about this? And when we're intrinsically focused, we write the answers down, we're journaling it down, we begin to understand why we are the way we are, why different things are going to affect us differently. Now we're beginning to put control mechanisms on this influential energy. I see on the internet from time to time, to turn off the news, they say. Because the news is very, according to their beliefs, the news is very negative. That's all they put on there is negativity. Well, okay. Or do you learn mentally how to deny that energy and see, yes, it may be a situation that may not be joyful. It may be negative in nature. You're not involved. It's not affecting you. What influence should it have on your life? Now, should it influence you to maybe donate to these different charities that can help these people who, as an example, who are affected by the flood? Or, do we pray for them? Obviously, sending them energy for healing and love and growth. But it really doesn't affect your everyday life, right? So why are you allowing those energies to influence you away from your path? Again, yes, there is this level of sympathy and empathy for those individuals, and by all means, I totally subscribe to that. I too pray every minute and every day for people to be found, people to be healthy, or at least, all connect. So, I understand all that. But the next question is, why do we allow it to influence our energy thousands of miles away and thereby alter our perception of our reality? I know. That's a you decision, not a me decision, right? Everybody's going to be different. All right. Today, my friends, I wish for you to embrace the strength of Thor. Embrace the idea that you possess the energy, power, authority, everything you need to deny these influential energies that are going to derail you or attempt to derail you from what you want to be, where you want to go, what your destiny is, whatever that is. It's certainly not the same as my destiny. It's not my desires, but ultimately, by being able to identify these influences, manage them, you then begin to take back control of your thought process, of how you perceive reality, of what this world then means to you, right? It's a very valuable tool in helping us to establish our mental health. So, use the power of Thor today to think about your influences and what influences you've had and are having, to begin to manage them. Put them in their place, use them effectively to grow and evolve, and kick out the ones that won't serve you, won't provide you with any value. All right? So, I will see you again tomorrow, where we will talk about the energy of Freya, the goddess Freya, a wonderful gift to all of humankind, certainly to humankind, but gods as well. So, a wonderful gift. So, I pray that you will join me for that. In the meantime, have a wonderful day and embrace your mental strength. Love and light, my friends.
Watching for Felina's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska Wolf Hefnar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.